What's up, guys? So we created a register page using Create React App and a GraphQL server to actually, persist the user or save the user in a database. And we're using PostgreSQL for our database. And today, what I'd like to do is create a login page. That way, we can access authenticated endpoints and persist the user for a week. So what I'd like to do. If they log back in, it should refresh their token. So what we're going to do is create the /login page for this. If you don't know what this project is and you'd like to get the code I have so far, I'll have links in the description below. You can grab that. Alright, let's get started. So first I want to just name this button. We call it primary. I'm in source, routes, and then in the register page for the code. And let's call it register. Just going to rename that button. And I'm going to actually copy all the code in register and put it in login because it's basically the same thing. It'll be a lot faster this way, and I can just go in and remove stuff. So we don't need checkbox because we don't have to say whether we're an admin or not. We're going to need this to be login. We're going to have an email and password state. If change, we don't need this check because we know we're not going to have an admin. And on submit, we're going to call a mutation. It's going to be a different type of mutation, a login mutation. And here we can get rid of the username input and the admin input. And we just have a button, and we'll call it login. And then here's our mutation, and now we just need to change our mutation from a sign-up mutation to a login mutation. So here I'm in graphical, and this is where my server's set up on port 3000 /graphical. So I can just do mutation, and we're going to have a email variable, which is going to be a mandatory string, and a password variable, which is also a mandatory string. Now log in, grab that email, which is going to be an email, and a password, which is going to be password. And here we can get the token and the refresh token. Now after we actually get these values, what we'd like to do, let's prettify you, make sure cool. After we get these values, we actually want to store the token and the refresh token in local storage. That way it persists. And what I mean by persists is when I mean they refresh the page, they go to another page, they come back, we still know who they are. So this looks pretty good. Let's run this and see if we get the tokens. So I'm going to open up console so we can see the tokens printed back to us. Alright, bob.bob.com, and we're going to click login. And bam, we have data, login, refresh token, token. So we can actually grab this. So response, and we're going to get the token and the refresh token from response.data.login. And then we're just going to say localStorage.setItem token, token, and then refresh token, refresh token. Now to make sure this works, I want to come over here to application, and then it's going to be stored. Okay, so we have nothing in local storage right here right now. As you guys can see, it's totally blank. But if I log in here, we should hopefully see our tokens show up. So if I go over here and type bob@bob.com and bob login, bam, our tokens show up. And notice if I go to say the register page, tokens are still here. If I refresh, tokens are still here. So we're basically going to use this to go to the auth page here and authenticate the user because we have these tokens stored. So what we want to do is use Apollo and we're going to actually use some middleware. So they actually have a section on authentication here, and we're going to do a header. We're going to add a header, X token, X refresh token. So we can just copy this because we're going to do something very similar. So if I go into my index where I'm creating this here, I can add middleware to my network interface. And what apply middleware does is every time I make a GraphQL query or mutation, it runs this piece of code right here. So this right here is just creating a new header if we don't have a header. Like this says, we're getting the token from local storage and putting it in the header. So we don't need all this junk. This is going to be called X token for us. We're going to say local storage.get item token, and do the same thing for X refresh token. Okay, so what's going to happen is when we make any requests, we're going to grab the token and refresh token, which you saw was stored in local storage. We put it in the header, and then our server looks in the header for the authentication tokens. And if it sees it, where he knows we're authenticated, and the server will show us authenticated routes. So in our auth page here, we are going to make just display all users, which is, I believe, an authenticated route. So let's change this up here. I'm just going to actually delete this. That way we can make this a pure function because we don't need any state for this. So I'm going to say pure auth is equal to, and we're going to get, for now we're not going to have any props, but later we will. And we're just going to have a div hello for now. And we're going to import our GraphQL things from React Apollo. And now we're going to do same thing as we did before, export default GraphQL. And now I'm going to pass GraphQL. I'm going to pass in a query, and I'm going to pass in this auth component. And so we actually need to make a query here. So we're going to execute this GraphQL query when this auth component loads. And the query I would like to do is all users. And if you see we run this, it says we're not authenticated. And let's just get the username. So now I'm going to paste this guy here. So this is going to get run, and if we're not authenticated, we won't be able to see stuff, but if we are authenticated, we should see things. So we should be authenticated, okay, because we passed in our token from the header over here. Oops, not over here. Over here, we're passing in our token, which we have in local storage. So we should be able to see this query, right? So if I come, for example, into React, I can actually look at the props of this component here, auth, and I should see in the data all users. And you can notice how it actually, we actually see stuff. So if I go to all users, array 3, blah, 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 you can see how we get Bob and stuff. Now, if I come to this page in an incognito browser, so I'm not logged in, paste that in, we should actually just get an error in the console. Yeah. We get an error from GraphQL, not authenticated. But notice, we're good over here, right? And that's because of our tokens that we have stored. So we can actually display the users if we care to. So data, and then all users, we could say. Let's just grab the data. Why not? Data, all users, and we'll say the default of this is just an empty array. And then we'll say const user, and the user will have a username and ID. We'll display the user by having an h1 for their username, and some might be null, that's expected. And then we'll just have And yeah, that's it. We'll just show a bunch of H1s. And the key is going to be the ID. So here we're just going to map that. We're going to say all users.map, and then we're just going to pass in our user function here. So now we should display all our users here. And I think we only have a couple, Bob and Tim. So there we go. And as we can see, we can refresh this. We're not authenticated, shouldn't get anything. So that is how that's working. And that is it for this video, guys. So we set up this auth route. We have to log in now to access it. And what I want to do in the next video is actually show you how you can redirect people if they're not logged in. For example, I don't want them to get this not authenticated error from GraphQL here. And I can also know they're not authenticated from the client side. So we don't even have to make a GraphQL request, which will save server performance. Because we can just check in local storage, see if there's a token. If it's there, redirect. Also, we can check to see if their token is valid. Not valid, but hasn't expired. So that's what we're going to do in the next video. And just check so we actually save requests and we can redirect them to the login page to actually log in. Otherwise, if they're already logged in, we just show them the content, right? Because it works. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.